Alright, let's jump right into it. We're playing Modern Warfare 2 Raid Mode, Episode 1. Since this game type requires 3 operators, there are 3 kits to select from. Assault will give you a plate box plus an extra plate to put on. Medic will provide you with a revive pistol, plus you can heal people faster. And Recon will give you a personal radar to throw down. Each of these was found to be useful at some point or another during the raid, so my recommendation is to select one of each. However, if anybody else has found success in a different strategy, feel free to share it with everybody in the comments section below. One of the things that is required, however, is a raid assignment. So if you look in the top right hand corner, you'll notice the various ways to obtain a raid assignment. You have to activate the raid assignment before you can start the raid. One of the issues that we ran into as a group was that after we activated the raid assignment, we had to back out of the lobby and then re-enter the raid lobby before the raid assignment would take effect. So if anybody else is running into that issue, that's a potential fix for it as well. This is going to be a relatively lengthy video. I do understand the raid itself was pretty long. The first time we did it, it took us about 2 hours. Once we got the hang of it, it took us about an hour. The world record is like 20 minutes or something like that. So that's pretty crazy. But we do want to show everything from start to finish. So that includes all the gunfights we got into and every puzzle that's involved. Utilize those timestamps if you're stuck on any particular puzzle. And let's just jump into it.
48 hours ago, goat herders in the Satik Mountains discovered an entrance to what appeared to be an abandoned bunker dug into the hillside. Closer inspection determined the hatchway was an inlet to what could be a fortified Soviet-era fallout shelter. Or something more. Commander Fub4rrrr tasked a follow-on team of LF fighters led by Alex Keller, call sign Echo 31, to make entry. He and his team haven't been heard from since their initial infill. Except for one update from Alex indicating that the tunnels were wider and more extensive than first reported. Again, that was his last and only message after confirming entrance. As of now, they're dark on comms. Fub4rrrr has since sent scouts to hold the area. Price, Gaz, Fub4rrrr, your mission is to locate Alex and the LF team and do a complete and thorough reconnaissance of the facility. If anyone or anything is down there, we need to know who and what.
Close.
No. We're here.
Same point. Alex's rig.
This is where they went in.
And never came back up. Arch front.
يا قائدة
في أي حركة؟
ما في شيء.
تمام. خليكي هون. تأكدي ما حدا يلحقنا.
حاضر سيدتي.
Captain, Gaz, check those ropes. We're going in.
Good to go. Solid.
If you don't hear from me, don't come looking. Keep your posts. Malika, you're in charge.
Yes, Commander Karim.
Let's go.
After you, Sergeant. As well. We're heading in now.
Copy, John. Keep me posted. Fub4rrrr, take care of them.
Always do, Laswell.
Alright, let's talk through this. So the first thing you'll notice is your weapons are stealth and you have no plates. So the assault guy can drop his plate box here and give everybody plates real quick. One of the things that we decided to do is just go hot from the beginning. And that's going to bring a lot of enemies towards you, but as soon as you can pick up some fire rate guns, higher fire rate guns, the better off you'll be. Especially towards the end. There are some armory locations as well where you can restock your plates and all of your ammo. So ideally you would want 2 guns with different types of ammo. you'll notice at the very end I end up with an SMG and an assault rifle for optimal fire rate, especially when things start to get a little crazy. And for those of you who have played this, you know what I'm talking about, but you'll see eventually. So we went hot here. We're pushing through. You have to kill all these enemies, and then once you get past this is the first puzzle. There are some claymores on the ground. You can hack those if you'd like. But one of the things that we noticed relatively quickly is that if we bunched up together, we died pretty fast together. So separating is probably the best scenario in this section. I would not suggest or recommend that for later sections. You are going to have to be in close quarters with a lot of dudes running up on you. So you want to be tight on your team, definitely. We're just taking out all of these guys here, and then we're going to get to the puzzle pretty shortly. You definitely want to keep an eye on your plates, though. Make sure you're plated up as often as possible. And you can pick up plates on the ground, so the heavily armored guys, the blue guys, and some of the other ones. Basically anybody who, if you hit, is going to take plates, has plates for you to pick up. Hopefully. It's not always the case. I know there have been some situations where the plates don't drop, so don't get too frustrated about that. But what you'll notice here is going up the right side, there is this alleyway, this corridor, so that will bottleneck the enemies if there are any inside there. And then once you can get to an elevated position, so you'll notice there's a catwalk above you as well, that's going to be beneficial too. So you get on the other side of this little corridor here, you can go up the stairs, and we end up in this room where it gets a little crazy, but this is where I'm kind of negated by my mention of separation with our actions. We got pinned down in here and we just end up getting flashed quite a bit. So you'll see those armored guys and we just scurry away from that grenade. The best thing you can do in that situation. So make sure you're utilizing your throwables. I wasn't really taking advantage of my personal radar here, which was a mistake on my part. But again, firefights can be a little daunting at times. So just pushing through, waiting to take out all of these guys here. And again, this is where we just kept getting flashed over and over again. So Dougie ended up closing that door. So I throw the radar out there and we can see all of the guys downstairs. So at this point, I decide to just bust through the door after Dougie closes it so that we can take out the guys who keep flashing us. I want to get this guy up top here, and grenades and flashes like crazy. So just take out all these guys. We're right here at the first puzzle, and we're going to talk through that in great detail. So if you guys, again, have any questions, you can leave those in the comment. I'll try to field those questions for you, but the video should help tremendously. Now that we've cleared out all these enemies, we're just going to look on the ground. We're going to look for some ammo, maybe some different guns. Like I said before, you want a higher fire rate weapon, especially as you get later on into the game. So I'm just going to be running around with this assault rifle here. But this is the first puzzle, okay? So what we're looking at here is a code display with letters. We're looking at, on the right-hand side where Fub4rrrr is, an input console for numbers that correspond to these letters. And where you find the corresponding numbers to the letters is going to be on the CCTV monitor. So there are two monitors, one in this room, one in the other room. Dougie is holding open the door so that I can get into the other room, because in any situation where you have to enter with a button press into another space, someone has to hold that open. If you're ever exiting, you do not have to hold it open for another person. You can simply just hold it yourself and then exit, and then it'll eventually close. However, if you're trying to enter into a room, you do have to hold open the button. So Fub4rrrr is going to sit on this first CCTV monitor here, and I will show you guys what the second one looks like once I get into that other room. Just bear with me here. I'm likely to repeat myself over and over again just to make sure that the concept is thoroughly explained, but there are numbers that correspond to letters on that red display, and you will view those numbers corresponding to letters through the CCTV monitors here. There are two sets of monitors. Fub4rrrr is on one, I am on the other. You're going to toggle your camera. For me on Xbox, it's left D-pad. over to what appears to be a projector in another room displaying the codes. All right. So now that we have the codes, the third person who is not looking at a monitor is going to look at the code display for the red letters. He's going to call them out in their order, in their chronological order as they're displayed. And we're going to input the numbers, or rather that third person who is calling out the display, as you can see, just did that code sequence, is going to put in the numbers in the console on the far right hand side of the other room as they correspond to the letters that that person is calling out on the display on the left hand side. So you can see here he's put in that code corresponding to what me and Fub4rrrr have called out on the CCTV monitors. Okay, that's why this raid assignment, before you even start, recommends heavy communication, mics, because you're going to need to work with people who you can communicate well with, who understand what you're saying, especially later on in the game when things start to get a little more hectic and there are timers applied to these codes. So hopefully all of that makes sense. The strategy that we went with was that I was just going to stay in this room on this CCTV monitor, and Fub4rrrr and Dougie were going to call out in the other room the codes that appeared. One of the tricky things, however, is that only one person can put in one code. So since there are 3 operators and there are 3 codes that have to be input, each person will have to put in a code. You can reduce the amount of time and movement and swapping by just having one person stay in this room, but there is another code out there that is now being input, that's being communicated on our party chat about what letters appear on that display, and then we're talking through, looking at both monitors, the CCTV monitors, which numbers correspond to that letter display. Okay, so for example, that letter display out there is WB and then some other letter. It's actually more than just 3. There are 3 numbers you have to input, but there are more letters. And this is why we're talking about chronological order, because the first 2 happen to be W and B here. All right. The third one is unknown to me because I'm not looking at that monitor. All right. But I got it from Fub4rrrr. So Dougie opened the door for me. He didn't really have to do that, but he's a nice guy. And the third letter corresponded to the number 3. The display is gone now. We've opened the submarine doors and we're ready to move on to the next step. If that was confusing for anybody, please feel free to leave a comment. I will try to answer any questions you guys might have. Okay, so this part here, this one's a little more tricky than the first one. They get progressively harder, understandably. So we have one air tank that is going to provide us air once we start to drown. Alright, so there's 3 people, there's only 1 tank. So what makes sense, and this is me just explaining the same thing to Dougie and Fub4rrrr right here. So what makes the most sense is if 2 people go at the same time, because you will need 2, but you do not need 3 for any of this. Okay, so what we end up doing is all 3 of us end up going at some point, and that's when we start to die. So I'm going to go first, and then Fub4rrrr is going to come down with me. There's a hole underneath this submarine to the left. You're going to take the tank with you, all right? And so for on Xbox, it was right trigger for the usage of the tank, and then holding X to take the tank away from the other person. So that person does not need to give you the tank. You can simply just take it from them, which is a nice feature. If you're drowning, you desperately need the tank, you can just take it from the person in front of you or next to you. So we're just following around. You can see here I'm starting to drown, so I take the tank from Fub4rrrr, and we swim up to this door here. So like I mentioned before, if there's ever an entrance button, it has to be held by one person while a second person moves through. The tricky part about this is that you can't pass the tank through the gate, so you have to orchestrate it in such a way that gives you enough time to be able to press the button, get through the gate, hold the button on the other side, and get the second person through with enough time. to pass you the tank, because you're likely to need it at that point. So what we did is we hit a checkpoint, and we decided that we were going to grab the third person for every checkpoint that we hit. Again, going back through, exiting a button or a locked door, you do not need 2 people. To enter, you need 2 people. To exit, you do not. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're essentially just playing like leapfrog here, where Dougie will come, and then we'll all meet up at the checkpoint, and then we'll move on to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. The trickiest part, if you can believe it, of the underwater sections is not necessarily the tank, because that just simply requires communication. You're letting each other know when you start to run out of air and you start to drown. The trickiest part were the tripwires in this section. So there are 3 different areas of tripwires. There are 2 that you absolutely have to go through, if I'm not mistaken, but there are 3 that we run into. So if anybody found a strategy to defuse or disarm those tripwires, I'd love to hear it. What we ended up doing is we just ended up triggering the tripwires and then dying and respawning at the checkpoints and then moving on to the next one. So we have all 3. First checkpoint of the underwater section. We're moving on to the next bit. A lot of this is just going to be me reiterating the same things over and over again, but you don't necessarily need 3 people to come with you. At some point, we do end up with 3 people, like I said, and it just gets a little complicated with passing around a single air tank. So this is the tripwire. I give the tank off. I go through it. I die. I respawn at the last checkpoint. They have the tank still, and we just continue to do this until we get rid of all of the tripwires. The next set of tripwires doesn't necessarily need to be triggered, but it is a good spot for a checkpoint. So we're all just pushing through here. This was fun, to be honest with you, just trying to communicate and navigate through this area while people are saying, I need it, I need it. But I digress. So that's the second tripwire there. That is a checkpoint. That's the second checkpoint, and that's 2 of 3 tripwires that we have to engage with. We're going to push through back to that elevator shaft. I respawned at the previous checkpoint because I died. We're going to push through here to the elevator shaft. I'll show you guys what it looks like. But then we'll move on to the third tripwire, and that's going to take us a little bit deeper down. Repeating myself here again, I'm sure, but these are good checkpoints to just have someone sit at. You do not need 3 people for this. You can take 2 at a time. If you're getting a little frustrated with someone who keeps dying or maybe hogging the air tank and swimming off by themselves, just leave them at the checkpoint and figure out where you're going first. You could even send 1 person through if you really wanted to. There are going to be situations where you need 2 people, like those button presses, but this is the third tripwire. Dougie's going to go down, die, and I'm just going to push on through. I got Fub4rrrr here with me. Dougie respawned at the previous checkpoint, so we're just going to go down. In order to descend, for Xbox, it's B. I'm holding B. And in order to ascend, I'm holding A. A is also used to stand up in the water. So when we get to the next section, or rather the last area of the raid, show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so it's going to be very useful when there are bunches of enemies swarming you and you need to just dive into the water, or you need to stand up quickly out of the water. I faded this out real quick because I died a couple of times through here. It's not a big deal. I just got a little bit lost trying to figure out where I was going. Even though I've done this before, it's still confusing if you happen to get lost. You're following those black arrows, the white arrows on the black background. So you'll be able to see those as you're navigating through these tunnels. And Fub4rrrr's already made it. Dougie was nice enough to come back and get me. And we're just pushing on through here. He needs the tank, so he's going to take it from me. And I should be close enough I can just go straight up to where there's air to the next checkpoint. This next section here is relatively simple. There's a generator that you need to activate in order to get power to press a red button. Fub4rrrr's sitting on the generator. It's obviously out of the water. and he's going to press it. It doesn't activate right away, though, for him for some reason. So we're going to come down, take a look at this button, show you guys where it says you actually have to activate the power here. So we go back up to the generator. We're going to press the generator then, and you can see where that cable goes from the button to that door. So it's obvious at that point that that button opens that door. That door is where you need to go next, but you need the generator on for the power to activate that button. Fub4rrrr's holding the button down. I'm going through. I'm going up to the next airspace. And Dougie and Fub4rrrr are right behind me. Safe to say I should probably show you guys where the other button is. So this is the button to get the last person through the door. Someone has to hold that for that person to come through. So that kind of negates what I was mentioning before, but there's no reason to go back through that door, so it's not necessarily an exit or an entrance. It's just a button press. There are a couple guys in here, and this is your first armory. You're going to be able to stock up on weapons, stock up on plates. Just have a quick little convo with your team. Decide what you want to do. Decide the best approach moving forward, given what you know already. And like I've mentioned a few times up to this point, I went for fire rate increases. So assault rifle, and I'm going to end up picking a mini for my SMG in just a moment here. Just use this time to catch your breath. Everyone has to regroup at this button here, at this door. So talk it over. Discuss strategy moving forward. You're about to run into a lot of guys at this point. Lots of heavy guys as well. So there are juggernauts that come around. Quite a few, actually, that will pop up on you. So I'm going to pick up this mini. And I have an M4, I believe, for my assault rifle. Grab as many semtex and proximity mines as you can. Those will come in handy for sure. And everyone's just going to regroup at this door once everyone's ready. Stock up on armor and everything you could possibly imagine you needed. And be ready to use any of your field equipment. I'm over here trying to figure out why I don't have enough ammo. And then just decide it's time to go. So we're going to push through here. You're going to run into some guys. You're going to just kill all of them. Go loud, no big deal. Once you've cleared all of these guys out, there's going to be a button that you need to press in this section. So there's a button in a different room. But there is a juggernaut here as well. So oftentimes in games where you end up in a restock situation, shortly thereafter, you know, you're talking boss fights where there's a bunch of loot prior to. This is a very similar situation here. So we've just stocked up on armory, and there is the juggernaut there. They're not too bad if everyone can focus their fire on the juggernaut. Just throw all those semtex at him and then focus your fire. But again, that's why you need the higher fire rate weapons to be able to accomplish that. That 10-round magazine suppressed BR that you start with is useless up to this point. And not just up to this point, but definitely beyond this point as well. It just gets more complicated and a little more hectic. So there's the button. I had never seen that bomb guy before that. He kind of scared me. Alright, so we're just pushing through. There's some enemies here. We're going to take these guys out. Second juggernaut of the game. Won't be the last. If you can pick up that minigun that Fub4rrrr has from the juggernaut, it's a good tactic as well. Just make sure all of your teammates either have plates, are plating up, or are reviving each other at the very least. But we've made it through this section here, just past the armory, and I like to break the raid up into 3 different sections. So the first one was the first puzzle, everything up to the first puzzle, clearing out the rooms, opening the sub doors. Second bit was the underwater level, and then this third and final bit is going to be another series of puzzles and a defend section is the best way to describe it. So you're going to complete another puzzle similar to the first one, but this one's going to be timed, and then there is going to be a defend section. So as you saw me there, I dropped into the water and then I pressed A to stand up. This is what I was talking about previously in the video. You can press B to go underwater. You can hold B to go all the way underwater, and that will help you to shield up, get your health back, because the enemies, unless they're staying right on top of you and they melee you, they cannot shoot you underwater. It's not necessarily super realistic, obviously, but it does come in handy, and you'll see me using that a lot as a strategy, especially when we're having to defend the door at the very end. There's not much else to say about this section. We're just pushing through to discover the projector rooms that were from the first puzzle. So we can talk about that a little bit. This last puzzle is going to be the same puzzle as the first one, but a lot faster at this point. There are guys that you have to defend against. They continue to come. There are bomb drones that show up, and this is where we die a lot. And I say we collectively as a community, I would imagine. Not just the three of us here doing this, but this is the most difficult area of the entire raid. Arguably reasonable, right? It's the last section, so it's going to be difficult. But we're trying to clear out this room here because on the back side of this wall that I'm hugging is a projector with the code that we need to access. There's a console that you have to interact with to activate the projector, and then you'll see us move on to the next room, clear that room out, activate that console, and get the projector up for that one too. I'll tell you though, these juggernauts, they were pesky. They were, for good reason. They're difficult enemies. But if one person's down, it's left to two people. And if two people are down, there's a juggernaut out there, good luck. It does get very complicated very quickly as people start to go down. Luckily, I was able to edit out most of the deaths in here, just so that, for time's sake, right, and not to bore everybody. One of the things that is nice about the raid assignment, or this raid mode, is that the checkpoints are very generous. So you'll notice if you die, you can retry things over and over and over again. The first time we ran through this, the very last section, we had to have died double digits, multiple times, a dozen or more. And you get to just continue to retry that section. So we're activating this console here. This is going to turn on the projector in front of us, and that projector is going to provide us with a code. That's the code that we're going to use to activate the console. Okay, so I misspoke ever so slightly. We just need to activate that console first, and then we have to go to the other console, and then that will initiate the projectors. There is ammo here. There are two sections of this last bit where this ammo comes in very handy. So there is one here. It's right next to the projector room, the second projector room. So if you just remember that it's in between both projector rooms, you should be fine. There's a little bit of panic that ensues here. I'm not putting on plates. I'm being a little careless with my activity running in by myself. So I'm just going to hold off for a minute, wait for my guys to come here, help me out, put on some plates, and then move on to this next console. There is a sentry gun next to this console that we found, so you can prop that up, and that'll come in handy as well. If you die, however, it will disappear, was our experience. I hadn't seen it after we died, after we had put it up. So, just some clarity, you will lose that sentry at some point. Alright, so we've made it to the second projector room. Here's the sentry gun right next to the console that you need to activate. I put it pointing this direction, opposite of the console and the projector, and I found that to be useful. So we're going to activate this. It's going to turn on the projector. It should anyways. Once we've turned on this other console. So activate both consoles in the projector room, and then come over here to this door that you will eventually need to defend. And we're going to activate this, and we'll start to get the codes displayed for us. Like I said, same puzzle as the previous, just a little more difficult. You'll notice in the top left-hand corner, there is a timer for the displaying Cipher 1. You have that much time to input the code that is displayed on the projectors. What we're doing now is we're going to have to split up. One person is going to go to one projector room. The second person is going to go to another projector room, the second projector room. And the third person, the last person, is going to stay at that console and put in the code that we decipher, basically, with these projectors. So just to explain this in greater detail, more granular, it is exactly like the first puzzle. So if you made it past that one, you understand what you're attempting to accomplish here. But it is timed, and there are more letters on the display at this point. So they have to be chronological as you input them. What's on that display over by the input console is in a particular order. The person who is sitting at this projector room can go into this back corner, and I had a lot of luck with just staying in this back corner and no enemies were approaching me. There were a lot of enemies out in the projector room, but in this room I was pretty safe and I could see the projector display from this location. So hopefully that helps you guys out. The second person is going to be in the other projector room, and the person who is reading off the code next to the input console is going to have to communicate in the order that the numbers are, the letters are being displayed on that console. And then while we're fighting, the other two people in the projector rooms are going to have to identify the letters that are being called out and displayed on the input console to the individuals who have those letters and their corresponding numbers. To be fair, it is not super complicated. The most difficult part of all of this is how much time you have left. So the time that is on the counter in the top left will reduce over time. The reduction of the timer depends on which cipher you're on. So once we complete the first cipher and we've put in the first code, you'll see it drop down from 60 seconds to 40 seconds. And then the last one is, I believe, 20 seconds. That's the most difficult, obviously. One of the other issues that crops up in this whole mess is that there's gas in this room. If you go underwater or out of the room, you're fine. But you're going to have to wait for the gas to dissipate so that you can go back into that room. And at the same time, enemies are coming after you. The best advice that I can give anybody who's in this section is just play very smart, okay? You're not going to be able to rely on your teammates too heavily for most of this stuff. You're going to have to try to survive on your own, because if you go down, someone has to come get you. And that person's going to leave their post. Their post is just going to get overrun with enemies. And what we end up having to do is clearing out a section because someone goes down. So we've input the first cipher. I decided to stay in this room, or rather we collectively decided I would just stay in this room since it seems to be the craziest one of the three, and the other two were going to swap places because very similar or identical to the first puzzle rather, each person will have to put, it's 25 seconds, not 20 seconds, okay. Each person will have to put in the code. So what ends up happening here is the other two are going to come this way, because someone's going to have to be in that room while I go to the input console to put in the third code. But then Foo4rrrrr ends up going down. We end up getting overrun by enemies, and we just have to collect ourselves. So, you know, don't feel bad. Don't get disgruntled. Don't get discouraged, anything like that. If you have to just take a step back, get your ammo back, get your plates back, clear out some of the enemies, make sure everybody's good to go. Use your field assignments, or rather your field equipment, because that stuff is very useful. I did not use mine often enough as recon. This was my first time as recon, so I'll use that as a valid excuse, I suppose. but your field equipment is definitely going to come in handy. So since we have some time here and we're just waiting to clear out some of these enemies and make sure everybody's good, I'll explain the cipher thing one more time. All right. So if you're tired of hearing me say it, you know, fast forward, whatever you want to do. But what you're doing here is similar to the first puzzle in that there is a letter code with numbers corresponding to them on those projector screens. So if you remember, the first puzzle was you were looking through a CCTV camera, right? At those projectors. Now you're just simply in the projector rooms with all the enemies. So this is the input console over here. I'm going to call out these letters to the other two guys. Those guys are going to give me corresponding numbers to those letters. I'm not going to use all of them. As you can see, there are 5 here, and we only have 25 seconds to do this. So you have to be able to communicate with the other two which 3 of the 5 letters are required. Now, I was just over there, and Douglas and Fub4rrrrr ran into some issues, so I have to go help them clear out some of these enemies, and then I will rush back. But you may find yourself having to do this a lot. Don't let it get to you. Just push through it. You'll eventually clear out all the enemies and all these bomb drones, and then you can kind of start from a square one perspective once you get everything, you know, out of the way, and then you can focus on your task at hand at that point. Before you start this raid, they talk about communication, but I think patience is a virtue in these situations. You need to be able to communicate well with your teammates, but don't get frustrated. Don't let your teammates get frustrated. Just keep pushing through it. Make sure you have the equipment and the weapons that you need to succeed. If you feel like your weapons aren't good enough, take a step back, go find some more. Make sure you have enough ammo. Make sure you have enough throwables, claymores, proximity mines. They definitely come in handy. Utilize everything at your disposal. This is me showing Dougie where that room was. Just so happens, once I leave, he starts getting attacked, so it wasn't as beneficial to him as it was to me. For whatever reason, I'm not real sure. Maybe it was just because it was the last cipher input, and so things got a little crazier. That very well could be it. Now that we have Dougie established in that projector room, Fub4rrrr and I are clearing out some of these other enemies. Going to get him established in this projector room, and then I'm going to go over to the input console. We're not going to be able to get it this time because there's only 13 seconds left, so we're going to wait for the cipher to change. And once it does, we got 25 seconds to communicate what those letters are. They're going to tell me what the corresponding numbers are. And so here I am saying I have a W, an A, a K, a weird double X thing, and an M. And they're telling me of those 5, in that order, which ones they have on the screen, what the corresponding numbers are, and I'm determining which ones are relevant, which ones aren't, and putting the code in. This last part arguably is the most difficult section. All of these doors will start to open up, and I've simply fast forwarded it here to our successful roll of this because we died a lot, right? So once you're ready, you're going to walk over to this door here, and you're going to regroup at the blast doors, and then the timer starts. You have 4 minutes to wait for the keypad blast doors to unlock. Okay, so it's much like any other game where you're having to defend an area. Enemies will start to engage and come from every possible angle. You just have to watch all of them. This is where I started to use my personal radar a lot more, because guys will come out of this door, guys will come down from that other projector room. Dougie's getting smashed on the opposite side. So the tactic that we discovered works the best. Instead of just running around like crazy, you have to stay by the blast doors. If you don't stay by the blast doors, the enemies will put bombs or C4 on the blast door, or the console rather, and you have to defuse that. So it doesn't make sense to leave this area because you're just going to have to come back to it if there's a bomb that you have to defuse. So stay here. One person checks one side, one person checks the other, and then the third person acts as a floater between the left and the right side. It goes without saying again, but I'll say it yet again. Communication is uber important here. You're going to talk to each other. You're going to talk about where you're at with your ammo, where you're at with your plates, where these enemies are, when that juggernaut arrives, because that's important. You want to take him out as fast as possible. What sort of equipment you still have, right? So I'm out of Semtex now. I need to look into my inventory at some point to make sure that I have more if I need them. But I'm getting overwhelmed here just a little bit. So at this point, I'm going to drop down into the water so that they can't hit me. And then I'm going to plate up, put my last plate on here. And we're 2 minutes in. Things are already a little difficult. And if you can believe it, they do get a little worse. It's important to note that there is an ammo box or an ammo bin or an armory storage, whatever you want to call it, in between those two projector rooms that we were showing. But there is also another one around the opposite side of this circular pillar here that we're looking at on my left. So if you were to go around to the opposite side of this roundabout, you would find another ammo box, and I'm certain that's what Dougie's using on the other side. He's definitely utilizing that ammo box. So here I am, diving underwater again because I'm getting hit. I'm letting Fub4rrrr and Dougie know that I have enemies on my side and I need some help. I need some coverage so that I can get my plates back on here. Although I don't have any plates, so that's not going to do me any good. So now I have to go find some plates. I grabbed one. I'm going to dive underwater, get this ammo bin. Show you guys where that's at. And then get these 2 plates on real quick. You can call the game broken if you want to, that the enemies can't shoot through the water and kill you, but that was our saving grace. You can see Dougie's underwater again too. So we just kept diving underwater if we needed to gain our health back, and communicating extremely well, telling each other where the enemies are, where the heavy hitters are, where the bomb drones are, because they come in waves, right? So there'll be like a dozen of them flying towards you. That was just one, but take my word for it, for sure. There's a dozen that'll fly at you at one time. There it goes. So we're 15 seconds in. The ironic part about this is prior to this winning run here, we got to 5 seconds about 3 or 4 times prior to this. So, like I said, be patient, communicate, don't get disgruntled. Once you've actually completed that section, the 4 minutes, all you have to do is walk up to this door. Everyone will regroup at the door. And that should successfully complete the mission for you. We were telling Fub4rrrr here to just go up to this door because we needed him. He was the last person there. But yeah, that's the long and short of it, guys. Again, long video. Hopefully this helps you guys out. Hopefully you found it entertaining and as a walkthrough, very informative.
Stay center. Guys, check left.
Roger.
On him. No, like that.
Same.
Eyes front. Show your hands!
Door! Door!
They're all dead.
Easy, they could be rigged.
No wires. These 2 are clear.
All clear here.
These are my soldiers. This is Arif. He volunteered to go in with Alex.
No, where the hell's Alex?
Echo 3-1, this is Kilo Actual. How copy? Echo 3-1, do you read?
Roger, this is Bravo in a blind radio check. Lads, are you getting this? Kate?
We're too deep. No signals.
Concrete and metal. Can't send or receive.
There's a silo, all right.
Found power. Lights up. Holy hell.
يا ترى سلام رخيلة هنا.
Soviet ICBM. Liquid fuel, supersonic.
Nuclear.
Thermonuclear,
50 years old.
at least.
You think there's a warhead up there?
Let's find out.